I'm Teresa Coraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. Today's episode is called When Mothers Ran the World. For a dozen episodes, I've been looking to add to my playlist on Where Are the Women? But I couldn't find any. I couldn't find examples of what I meant by that concept. And then this week, Charles Eisenstein came out with an essay called Feminine Power. And in it, he quotes Ursula K. Le Guin that we're not looking for honorary men, or as I've referred to Hillary Clinton, patriarchs without penises. What we're looking at is that role of women in full adulthood of taking responsibility. And I have some examples that I've been wanting to give that are from David Graeber's and Wengrow's The Dawn of Everything, about cities that were run by colleges of priestesses, and an honorary title called the Mother of All Nations, and a woman who really showed what that could mean. So I want to talk about that, but first I want to start with the personal, because I believe that anything that is personal to us is connected, that we're not alone, we're not isolated, that there is a ripple that runs through all of us, and that what we're feeling is probably not something that it's just us. So I'll begin with that and the political and spiritual. Here in Northern California, where I live, we've just had the first few days that really feel like winter. It is dark, it's overcast, it's cold both inside and outside. And I woke up this morning at 3 a.m. and realized that there was nothing I had to do today. There were certainly things that I could do and many things that I should do, but nothing that I had to give me that sense of urgency and purpose that would distract me. It was almost like those first days of the pandemic when we were in lockdown and there was a sense of, okay, what do I do with myself? How do I fill up my time? And time seemed so long because you didn't realize how many things had been distracting you from its passage. So I did my usual rituals, my Course in Miracles, and did my meditation and read my Substacks, and it seemed like a lot of infighting. If you are in the anti-vax community, which I identify with, there's a lot of fighting within it, and there's a lot of meanness that is going on outside of it, directed towards the outside. And that just makes me sad. And then politically, I definitely feel this winter of dread in identification with Europeans and the people in Ukraine who have been, because of my so-called leaders in my country, subjected to 60% energy infrastructure that has been lost because of these actions, and Europe and what it means to people that may be looking at no food, no fuel, no jobs. This is such a horrible thing that people are going through, and it's so without purpose and meaning. And then around 6:30, I looked out the window and I just had this feeling it was never going to get light, that we were going to be in this eternal darkness, that there was just this ominous sense of what if it stays this way? And I feel like we collectively are going through kind of this dark night of the soul, and that we need to acknowledge that and be in that space, and be in that space together. There's the saying that the darkest hour is before the dawn, which never made logical sense to me. It seems like that should be halfway in between sunset and sunrise. But there's definitely that feeling of, well, this is how things have always been, and it's just how they're going to stay. Let's explore that. Some of this sense of vulnerability may have been listening to Matt Taibbi and Walter Kern do their This Week retrospective, which I really recommend. There's something about the combination of a seasoned journalist and Matt, who are having a what the fuck conference saying, we'll be back next week, if there is a next week. They go through so many things that are happening. And it's an eerie thing to have all of the knowledge of what's going down these days. And then to be walking around where people are talking about their kids' baseball game. It's a strange disconnect that people are going on as if life is normal when you and I know what the fuck. Later this morning, I watched the documentary Safe and Effective, which is the story of some vaccine injured. It is a hard film to watch, and I sobbed after watching it, but it is harder to be living that. And so take care of yourself and protect yourself. But if you are one of those anti-vaxxers who thinks that they have some kind of moral superiority, it is your duty to watch that. Because when they talk about the response they get and the lack of support and attacks they get from both sides, you need to pay attention. Because I guarantee you there is some issue right now that you're on the wrong side of. And when it bites you in the ass, you need to remember how you treated other people. I could give my examples, but I'm sure you have your own for all those things that just make you feel it wouldn't take much. It wouldn't take much to just slip off of the tightrope that we're all walking over, this abyss, that we are all precarious. We're all so vulnerable, where it just wouldn't take much. Whether that much is economic or political or personal, it just wouldn't take much. A few years ago, my ex digitized our home videos and put them on a drive somewhere so that they could be watched by the girls and myself. My daughters found that they could only watch them in little bites and that they needed a support group around them, because there was something about them that just made them so sad. And it wasn't because they were sad in the movies. It was that they were so happy, that they were so carefree and confident and sure of being loved. As my oldest has said, I realized I'll never be that secure again in my life. What it made me realize is that we're a motherless culture. As an entire society, we're not feeling that sense of security. There's not a sense that people are watching out for us, that they care about us, that we would be missed if we fell through the cracks, that someone would catch us. That's something that I think permeates our culture and creates this heartbreak in us. In Charles Eisenstein's essay, Feminine Power, he's analyzing the Rings of Power, the new movie adaptation of Tolkien, and in particular the character of Galadriel. His question is whether Galadriel taking on masculine power through violence is really the kind of victory for feminine power that he was looking for, and that Tolkien, he says, portrayed more subtly. This is what he writes. Let me put it another way. First, a distorted patriarchy demotes women to second-class status, holds feminine powers in irrelevancy and contempt, and ultimately denies them altogether. Then women internalize that attitude, demean their own femininity, doubt the worth of their feminine powers, take on the cultural blindness to feminine power generally, and replace it with masculine power in an attempt to become what Ursula K. Le Guin calls an honorary man. Those who succeed earn the privileges and status once reserved exclusively for men. They become CEOs, commanders, engineers, judges, career women. Thus they earn status and financial reward in contrast to their sisters, who never achieved escape velocity and remain full-time mothers or homemakers or low-paid, low-status members of the caring profession. And then later he says, is this to be the model of the new woman? Is this progress for women's equality? Again, taking our current system for granted, then yes. If traditional feminine roles and ways of being are devalued, then it is indeed progress for women to escape them. It would be a much deeper feminism to revalue where patriarchy has devalued, and to center society around the feminine powers that have been restored first to visibility and then to reverence. I think that the term reverence, rather than just relevance, is the operative word, because we live in a culture that fetishizes youth, that celebrates immaturity, that sacralizes this prepubescent hedonism, this egocentrism. We've made a cult out of that, and that permeates our whole culture. I look at my pocket recommendations on my browser, and one is what we can learn from teenagers about America. Why would we be learning something from teenagers who have never taken responsibility for themselves, much less anyone else? I'm going to end by talking about the mother of all nations from the dawn of everything. It begins with the creation epic of the League of Five Nations. In the story, everything is in chaos. There are literal cannibals, and they're led by this deformed witch, which is male in that story, and that's called Adudara, and I will pronounce this to the best of my ability. The narrative centers on a hero, Daganadwida the Peacemaker, who appears from what is later to be the neutral territory, determined to put an end to the chaotic state of affairs. He wins to his cause first the Jigonsaseh, a woman famous for standing outside all quarrels. He finds her hosting and feeding war parties from all sides of the conflict. And then Hiawatha, one of Adudara's cannibal henchmen. Together they set about winning over the people of each nation to agree on creating a formal structure for heading off disputes and creating peace. Hence the system of titles, nested councils, consensus finding, condolence rituals, and the prominent role of female elders in formulating policy. In the story, the very last to be won over is Aduranda himself, who is gradually healed of his deformities and turned into a human being. In the end, the laws of the League are spoken into belts of wampum, which serve as its constitution. The records are transferred to the keeping of Adurando, and his work finished, the peacemaker vanishes from the earth. The term Jigonsaseh, though, is hereditary, and so there was still one who was there in 1687, when King Louis XIV decided to put an end to the League of Five Nations. What he did was have his governor invite all the leaders to a peace conference, and once they got into the fortress, he arrested them all and shipped them off as galley slaves. But here's what comes next. The Jigonsaseh, however, had chosen not to attend the meeting. The arrest of the entire Grand Council left her the highest-ranking League official. Since in such an emergency there was no time to raise new chiefs, she and the remaining clan mothers themselves raised an army. Many of those recruited, it is reported, were themselves Seneca women. As it turns out, the Jigonsaseh was a far superior military tactician to the governor. After routing the invading French troops near Victor, New York, her forces were at the point of entering Montreal when the French government sued for peace, agreeing to dismantle Fort Niagara and return the surviving galley slaves, which turned out to be a dozen or so of the 200 who had been captured. We're in another moment of the dawn of everything. And certainly we can see that there is a way that life is being cannibalized. And we can't be part of that, not in any way. We need to look the same way that we would look at our own children and say, why is that person doing that? I know it's not because they're a bad person. It's just because they've been lost. They've been made to be deformed in some way from their humanity. And that's everyone. That's the greatest of the witches and whatever the male version of that is. So let's reclaim our role as the mother of all nations and recognize that we are the exact right person in the right place at the right time, because all of time has been in order to put us in this moment because we know what to do. If you would like more inspiration from the dawn of everything, here's Muskrat Love and Anarchy, and here is the playlist, Where Are the Women? And please check out my Substack where these quotes will have the correct spelling and you too can guess at the pronunciation. Thank you.